regrets, but maybe one I don't know if it's a regret because I've helped so many people, but personal stuff, you know what I mean? Like I said, when I started this, it wasn't even about me. It still isn't about me. But, you know, now I have a team that relies on the business and anyways, where was I going with this?
We're just talking about things that could end at any minute.
Yeah, where was I going with this? Damn it. Too many, been blown up too many times. What were we going after?
We were talking about anxiety. You know, and how you're managing it.
Yeah. You know, I was always a little upset with myself because I didn't build something that I could sell. Meaning, this isn't something that can get passed down to my kids. This isn't something that my wife can take over. This isn't something that if I get sick or die or I can't move around. This tragedy happens. This isn't something that I can hand to my team and say, run this. You know, and that always bothered me is, man, there isn't a way out of this. There isn't, I didn't build a legacy thing that I can pass down to future generations of my family or my team or whoever. But rather than sit there and whine and bitch about it all the time, we were talking about this at breakfast. I mean, now I'm building companies, you know, and I'm building companies that I'm going to advertise here, that I'm going to sell, or I'm going to pass it down, you know, to my son and my daughter, my wife. And so,
have you tried Sesh nicotine? It's really good. It's really good.
Do I have a Sesh?
I haven't.
But so I started, you know, instead of whining and complaining about it, and I didn't have any time, you know, to start something because of the show and all the stuff that goes into this. You know, I started focusing my energy on building new companies, and instead of having to rely on advertisers all the time, I'll build my own companies, advertise those companies. And so now we're in the process. By the end of this year, we'll launch 3 new companies plus a network, so I guess technically 4 companies. And
Intel tells us that the operative syndicate members are currently in the area.
I think people put limitations on themselves, and yeah, there's limitations for sports, all these things, but when you find what you're good at, there are no limitations.
There are
nothing. Nothing can get in my way.
If you love it, you know, if you find the thing, if you love it and you're good at it, you know, the difference between a career and a vocation was always kind of confusing to me until I started doing this and realized that vocation, that where it comes from, vocal is a calling. It's not a job, it's not a career. So even before the channel was very successful, I felt like I'm meant to do this. Connecting with people, entertaining people, having fun, and somehow it became a sort of a family show. I don't know if my 7-year-olds are learning at age card what they are. I have a 9-year-old sending me videos about audit the Fed, taxes or theft. Which is glorious. But those are the things that give me a lot of fuel because what I'm doing is not really that important, but I'm bending the universe a little bit in my direction.
I think what you're doing is very important. And here's why. Because I think that the U.S. as a whole has lost the ability to critical think. And like with your episodes, I mean, you bring in all the information, all the conspiracies, all the points of views, and it forces people to think through it. And then at the end, you save your opinion or how you think and go in. And I think it's very, it in a way, it's a relevant exercise.
It is.
In a world where nobody does that anymore. Everybody is told how to think through mainstream media, through social media, through Hollywood, through all of that. I actually just did a documentary on this. It's called Cognitive Warfare. You know, and they inject and project what they want you to see, how they want you to think. And you have
I'm going to do an episode on that. That's on your documentary. That sounds interesting. I try not to inject my opinion too much in it. I try to say, here's all the stuff I found out. If there are things that are definitely debunked, I'll say so. This didn't happen. But this, I couldn't really, I can't really debunk this part. You decide. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm not a pundit. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I enjoy the stories. And that's why the format is the first 2/3 of the episode. I just tell it like it's true. Just so you can have the experience of, like, I know this channel, I know eventually he's going to say, but is it true? But
This will surely be
this
a
one
low
looks like it could,
distance.
this one could be real. and that's what I'm trying to capture is, you know, I get people that are angry at me for debunking their favorite stories. It's like, why didn't they go against the real?
I was angry when I watched the moon landing, when I was like, what? He thinks we landed on the moon?
And I go back and forth with, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if men walked on the moon. I think that we probably landed on the moon, but I'm not sure men walked on the moon. But it's that's a tough one.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that in a minute. I want to go into, I mean, you had mentioned, we were talking about anxiety still, and you had mentioned maybe a new show segment or something, bringing the people that you utilize for your research on the topics that you discuss in, and we were talking about being a conversationalist. And, you know, what I think is interesting is, you're a commentator. Are you talking to a camera, or is somebody behind that camera?
No, I'm talking to a teleprompter. I'm reading.
Okay. I can't do that stuff. I cannot talk to a camera. We've tried to get me to do some commentary stuff. I can't do it. It's talking to. I used to put paper targets. I used to do this series called Hard Truths, and one of the guys that have been with me the longest would drive in, and I'd make him sit across from me just to talk to him. Just so I'm talking to somebody, and if he couldn't make it, then I would set a paper target in the chair, and I would talk to the paper target, because I cannot look at a camera and just go. And, you know, starting the podcast, like I mentioned, I'm not a conversationalist. At least I definitely wasn't at the time. And so that's where I just took my therapy, and I was like, just listen. Just don't interject. Don't try to relate to any of that stuff. Just be a sponge to whatever's coming out of the person across from you, and maybe guide the conversation. And what I learned is, if you can be comfortable in silence, most people cannot be comfortable in silence. They will fill the room. They will fill the room because they feel it, and you won't have to. And that's actually one of the first things that I love about my life is that we can just sit there and not talk and be totally comfortable. And I was like, there's like nobody I can do this with. Everybody has to talk all the time. So, you know, I think you'll find that when you start doing your interviews is they'll fill the silence. You won't have to.
I can feel it sitting